Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Dial M for Films. And we're chatting with Shakun Batra. Shakun, welcome to the session and thank you so much for making time.
It's my pleasure to be here.
If things were normal, Shakun would have maybe returned from Sri Lanka after shooting maybe more than 50% of your film. So we thought this would be a good way to kind of get Shakun to rise, so to speak. But I'm really grateful. And Shakun is one person, he's one of the most talented directors around. And he's somebody who believes deeply in learning and also sharing. And he's helped MAMI a hell of a lot in the past and has been an early collaborator of the Academy in putting the festival back on the map. So we've got a lot to be grateful to him for. Shakun, let's hit the ground running because we've got a lot of ground to cover. So I want to start by asking you that what do you mean when you say, when you talk about creating rhythm in a scene?
Okay, so full disclosure to begin with, I think when you asked me to do this, I was just thinking of a cool thing to talk about. I thought it'd be cool if we just say finding the rhythm of a scene. So I said it because I know there's a rhythm, but it's not something I actively sit down and think about. But after I gave it to you and you being you were so serious and you called me like, okay, we need to discuss this. I was like, shit, I don't know what I'm going to speak about, right? So that's when I really sat down and I started to ask myself, what the hell am I going to speak about? I mean, I've said finding the rhythm. And I have to say for almost like the first couple of hours, I couldn't come up with a definition, right? Because rhythm is such an elusive thing, right? It's not something that's easy to define. It's something you feel. It's like tone, right? How do you define tone? It's something that you internally feel. And that's when I really started to say, no, I have to find the best way to kind of articulate it. And I think the version that I came to, which I think makes sense to me, is it's an intended design by a storyteller to evoke a certain feeling in the audience, right? I think all of us as filmmakers, as storytellers, are always trying to, I think our first purpose is to evoke an emotion, right? And how you evoke an emotion is by a design, through a design, which is, how a scene unfolds. And that design is for me rhythm. So it's not just the pace, it's everything included. Pace is a part of it. So yeah, so that's what I came up with. I'm sure somebody has a better definition, but for now, if this makes sense to you, the rest of the class will make sense. If this doesn't make sense to you, you can just say bye to me.
So, no, the thing is that if just for the sake of simplicity, if we were to take we were to sort of divide the filmmaking process into four broad categories: the writing, the prep, shoot, and edit. Then, what would be? Where does the process of infusing rhythm in a scene begin? Who are the key collaborators, and also a little bit of myth busting, because the moment you say rhythm, and you did talk about it a little bit when you were answering the first question, the moment you say rhythm, people think about pace. And then everybody feels that rhythm is usually created during the edit, but that's not true, right? So if you could just take us through the key collaborators and how does rhythm, the creation of rhythm, percolate through these four stages of filmmaking?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, that's a great idea. I think we should go step by step. It'll be easier for me also to kind of break it down. So first thing, I don't think it's possible to make a film without some kind of rhythm. Even if it's bad filmmaking, it'll have some rhythm, right? It might be fractured, it might be, but rhythm pretty much starts in your head. It's like the way you are hearing your dialogues, right? It's the way the scene's going to play out. So for me, yes, it's divided in four stages, and I think that's what we're going to really discuss each and every stage. In the pre-production, in the writing stage, the rhythm is in how you write the dialogues, and so I think there are four elements to a rhythm. There is dialogue, and at the way you hear the dialogue. There is the way you shoot a scene and block a scene, and hence it's about also camera movement and choreography of actors. So it's a dance between camera and actors. The third would be the way you edit a scene, and you can always find a rhythm in edit. I think it's extremely crucial that there's a rhythm to the edit, right? And then I think the fourth one is the way you kind of impose music on it, which can change your feel and all of it. So I think in the first stage, as you mentioned, in the prep stage, I think rhythm is in the writing. So I think the great example, then I did share a couple of links before coming on this, because I thought it'd be easier to kind of talk about these scenes. And those who are joining us on Facebook Live, these are scenes available on YouTube, and you can watch it, and it'll be easier for you to understand what, my interpretation of these scenes. So, as I said, dialogue. You see anything by Coen brothers or anything by Sorkin, why does it feel like there's a music to the dialogues, right? Because it's written with that kind of music to it. It almost has its own rhythm, its own how it unfolds. Regardless of how you edit it, regardless of how you shoot it. If you see the courtroom scene in Social Network, the one we shared online, it's called Do I Have Your Attention? And also, I think the first scene of Social Network, which is the opening scene, which is an 8-page scene of them just sitting on the table. The reason that scene works so well, and if you actually see it, it's just camera on these two actors. It's not even changing magnification. It just tuck, 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 tuck. And there's a rhythm to the dialogue, so you don't have to do much. Similarly, Coen brothers, Fargo, if you hear the dialogues of that film, it's got that rhythm to it. Even if you take like, why did commercial Hindi cinema feel so good? It's that rhythm in the heaviness in the dialogue, the way it landed, right? The way Mr. Bachchan landed a dialogue, it had that weight. So it was written with that rhythm, So I think that's one of the first and foremost things that comes early on in the stage when you're trying to find the rhythm of the scene. Second, for me, is where the director comes in, if he's not the writer, which is interpretation of that dialogue, right? How quick, how slow, how he's going to take a beat, how he's going to take a pause. And again, I think on Social Network, they had a very close collaboration. If you see any of the rehearsals, any of the behind the scene, you'll always see Sorkin and Fincher standing together. In the rehearsal, they're hearing it, they're sharing notes, because it's written to that. In fact, there's a great interesting thing. I think the length of Social Network screenplay was 160 pages, right? I mean, that's a no-go for any producer. So most producers, studios are like, okay, this is too long, so you're going to cut it short, right? And Fincher and Sorkin got together, and what Fincher did is Fincher made Sorkin read out the script, and he recorded the script under 2 hours. And they went to the studio and said, this is the pace. This is how we're going to speak the dialogues. And most of the instructions that was given to the actors while they were playing out the scene, including the first 8-minute scene, was take a minute out of it, take 30 seconds out of it, now take 10 seconds out of it. So it wasn't so much about give me that emotion, give me that feeling. It was more about, no, speed it up, hit it quicker, get there quick. And I think what they were trying to do with that is hit a rhythm of the scene, which was intended in the director's and the writer's head. So that was very early on in the prep stages that they had figured it out. They had figured it out. So editing, camera, all came much later to that. So it was, so I think, as I said, I think it's crucial that you can find the rhythm. One of the new shows that I absolutely love, which has great rhythm, is Succession. A show like Veep, where the dialogues are so good, right? It's great dialogue writing. But not always do dialogues have to have this kind of back and forth rhythm. It's not always a repartee. It's not always this kind of, like even Kapoor and Sons, they are conversational dialogue. And the way you and I speak in day to day, it doesn't have a rhythm. It's not written for that impact. So for Kapoor and Sons, the dialogue didn't have to have such a strong rhythm. That came in later. For me, it was more important to kind of create just a sense of how these people would speak in real world. And then how I imposed rhythm was in the second stage as a director of blocking camera, and how I moved the actors, how I edited it. Also, it's important for me to say that if you see any true master of filmmaking and any great filmmaking, all these things will work at the same time. Rhythm will be found in dialogues, it'll be found in editing, camera, all of these things will work simultaneously hand in hand. But sometimes one works more than the other. So for me, Aaron Sorkin or Coen brothers, that dialogue just always has a rhythm to it, which I love. Secondly, I think going on to camera blocking, going on to staging. I think people call it blocking, some call it staging, some call it actor choreography, camera choreography. For me, what's important is, again, there are two ways to do this. Is I think sometimes you just block a scene with people and then you just decide where the camera should be. So you're like, oh, you move like this, you move like that, and you put the camera here. And there's some other times where camera and actors have been designed together. It's almost like there's a dance going on. And for me, any Spielberg film, right, has that kind of beauty in how it's choreographed. So even though dialogue might not have that rhythm, it's the way a Scorsese or Alfonso Cuarón or Spielberg, and that's why I call them masters. It's just they will bring this music to the way the camera moves. Even if there's no background score, there is this feeling in the way camera moves. So the feeling that they want to evoke comes from the camera move. It's how the Spielberg would go from a wide to a close, how Scorsese will kind of add this chaos in the camera movement that will evoke that feeling. So I think you can evoke feeling from the camera move and how the actors are staged with that camera.
Shakun, I just wanted to come in here to say that, when you manage to kind of put a draft in place that you feel is shoot ready, or at least it's in that stage where the director and the DOP, and you've co-written both your films, right? So maybe the process is a little different for somebody who comes in and is handed a written draft. Maybe it takes a little longer to kind of get into the writing and then creating and building that rhythm.
Right.
But once you've got a draft that you feel is now shoot ready, and maybe the recce's, the technical recce's and the location recce's can begin, what happens to that script when a DOP and a director decide to go and kind of fit that script into spaces? Right? Because now you actually start to get to know where you're going to keep the camera, where things are going to move, how you're going to block that. So tell us a little bit about that in terms of what kind of impact it has on the rhythm.
So, I now in retrospect, for me, I feel the reason I was co-writing my films was almost because it gave me a chance to understand tone and rhythm. Because I feel if something was handed over to me in the beginning, I would have been, as a director, not so sure how to impose my rhythm. You see, Scorsese and Spielberg, they were always masters of imposing a rhythm on the written material. For me, I didn't feel so confident. So in a way, I think I still write because I feel like I'll have a better understanding of how I want this thing to feel if I write it myself with my co-writers. So yes, I think it changes. And I think rhythm is just like tone. It's ever evolving. It doesn't stop. You see, you define it at a writing stage, you define it at a camera stage, then you redefine it at an edit stage. And it's almost like the last thing that you're doing on the film with background music, right? You're defining how the design will work. And I think in film, I always, I always look up to directors where the craft almost seems very decisive, yet hidden. So it's not something they are being flamboyant about. But when you study them carefully, you can see they've taken a lot of time to kind of put little things to kind of feel a certain way, right? I think everything in a film by a great filmmaker is to evoke a feeling, is to, how do I get it? How do I do that? So yes, what happens is generally on a recce, and collaborators just come in, a cameraman would say, hey, what if I do this? What if I do that? And you will be like, what if I do this? And I feel like you start to feel what a location offers you and how that would change the rhythm of the scene sometimes. I think in Social Network, it wasn't the case. It was very well defined by the dialogue and they had to go that way. But yes, in Kapoor and Sons, things changed. You see, I always knew I wanted to kind of move with these people to kind of feel the authenticity of how they live. So I was always looking for a house, a location where I would be allowed to go with them, right? So I knew that I was looking for that. But once I found it, I almost redesigned and wrote my dialogues to fit a certain duration. Like, oh, if he needs to go from here to the kitchen and I need to be with him, then I need to give him an extra line. Or it's almost like, oh, I need to take one line out because I'm getting there too quick. So yes, it is minor adjustments as you go forward. Also, like sometimes, you'll have a short scene but you want to do a longer camera move because it feels more right to how you want to design that shot. Right. And then you're like, oh, I need to add a couple of lines. And the same happens when you're designing, in Kapoor and Sons, I was definitely trying what I call shot oneers. They were not the whole scene in one shot, but they were these shot oneers, like it'll be like they'll hold on for 30 seconds, 50 seconds, 1 minute. In fact, my aim, my dream at that time was to do the entire end sequence as one shot. And I failed miserably. So I kept designing it, but I couldn't find the rhythm. I couldn't find the rhythm of the shot that would give me the feeling of the family coming together in the end. So I had to then break it down. So it's these things, you have a design in your head, and then when you're on location doing recce, you are wondering if that design will fit and if that design will allow you to evoke a feeling. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the location will help you designing it even better, right? So yeah, that happens as you go into the shoot stage.
Shakun, when we were chatting, you told me once that you said that I do a lot of my directing before I go on set. I want you to talk about that.
So yes, because I think I by nature like to go prepped. But at the same time, if this was a decision I made. If some of you have seen my first film, which I was very, very young, I was all about showcasing my craft. I wanted people to see that I knew how the cameras place so precisely and how the color palette is so right and the composition so well thought out. Like I would sit there just like, oh no, this should not be a 32. This should be a 50. Oh no, this should be come back on a 25. And I was just caught up in that, right? I had storyboarded, picture framed all the scenes in my first film. So in the second film, I told myself, because I do feel that in my first film, the design made me not concentrate on the story sometimes. I got too bound by design. So in my second film, I wanted to free myself. So, I kept telling myself, one, I will not do too much of a story. I will not do storyboarding for my second film. But because I was so nervous, I started to kind of think a lot more about how I wanted it to unfold, how I wanted to shoot. So it's kind of this balance that I try to strike, where I prep a lot, but then on set I don't want to be bound anymore by the design I've thought of. Then on the set, I'm trying to be more open. I'm trying to be more inclusive of what people are bringing in. I do think of like 2 or 3 people as my key collaborators, whether it's the actors or cameramen, and then I'm open to that suggestion, yet within certain confinement of like how I see it, right? So yes, I do a lot of prepping, but I think if you're going to be somebody who's sincere about your craft, I don't think you can just go on set and start figuring everything out. I think a lot of figuring out has happened when you are reading a scene, when you're reading the scene with the actors, when you're on the tech recce, you've already figured out a lot. And then you give yourself the freedom to see if anything will add more to your design. So I will not listen to anything that takes away from my design or takes away from what I had in mind. But anybody who brings any more value to it or a different idea that actually makes me go closer to what I wanted, I'm all up for it. I'm very excited to jump in and be like, oh yeah, let's do it, and that happened a couple of times too, on the film. So yeah.
Shakun, tell us a little bit about that, because what my takeaway was when you were talking about doing a lot of your directing before you actually went on set was incredible, because it actually, like when you shoot, it's a process in motion, right? So you don't want to be doing your prep at that point of time. You don't want to be arriving at your thumbnails at that point of time or what you want to do. But there is also a magic to what happens on a shoot. And have you seen things drastically change sometimes when you're on set and discover something that you wouldn't have discovered if you weren't on ground shooting that particular scene?
Yes, I think, in fact, I'm always hoping for that moment where you see something or feel something which you had no idea about, right? Because I feel that's the fun part. It could be a prop. It could be a prop you never thought of. It's just on set, and now the actors used it and it's going to change. Right? I think even in the scene we're going to discuss further ahead, I did not know what Rishi sir is going to be wearing, but he was there with the cap and a muffler, and there was a vase with the rose, and I was like, oh, we should just use all of this. You come ahead, take the cap, give it to the mother, take the rose, give it to the mother, and Rajat took the flower and he gave it to the mother, and all of a sudden, like, it started to add so much of value to that scene, right? Because it was about them coming together. The scene, we'll come to that, but we'll talk more in detail. So yeah, I genuinely, I'm hoping for that thing to strike. I'm every day when I go on set, I'm always actually looking around to see what I may have missed. In fact, on the set, what I do is I read the scene before I step on the set. So then when I step on the set, I'm just looking around to see what may add or be different than what I wrote. And I want to be surprised. I would love for that thing to happen as much as it can,
Shakun, we were also speaking about the fact that, when you, now that the old, old norms that have been set that, okay, fine, if you have 1 page on script, that means it's a minute on screen. And these are the kind of things that are breaking right now, because you could have like 3 pages for a 30-second sequence, and you could have 1 page for something that's going to translate into 3 minutes. So tell me, how do you block like a 8-page scene? When you've written a 8-page scene, how do you block it? How do you prepare for that? How do you create a rhythm within that?
Right. So yes, I think there is, it's a broader understanding that a 120-page script is about 2 hours, 2 or 10 minutes. That's like kind of the go-to length of a screenplay. And when you're writing, they generally tell you that it's a minute a page. And it's mostly, I think it's broadly true. But even when we come down to the scene we're going to discuss from Kapoor and Sons, which is where the family comes together and they sing Chansi Mehbooba Hogi, and it's a scene about them feeling like intimate again. If the reason I even pass the scene out, and I think the script is available on Film Companion to read, you will see there's a part of the screenplay which is just 8 lines, and that takes 4 minutes. And there's the rest of the scene is 6 pages, which takes 2.5 minutes, right? And so I think that's where rhythm also comes in. Even though it's written like this, you have a rhythm for how it's going to unfold, right? So a 6-page scene is just the way I'm seeing is overlap. I want dialogues to come over each other. I want it to be edited a certain way. So it's going to go much faster because there's an intended rhythm in my head, which is faster than it's on the page. Same thing with Social Network. The inherent rhythm of Social Network is much faster in Sorkin and Finch's head than it's on the page. And it can be vice versa too. It could be a 1-page scene that takes 2 minutes to shoot and unfold. So yes, that could happen. I think when we get to the scene, I can talk about how I broke it down, how I decided to stick to the scene, how I decided coverage on the scene. So yeah, we'll definitely discuss that. I'll also have it here, so I'll be able to talk more about it. So going back, I think now to the blocking and camera movement and how it adds to the rhythm. I think, again, as I said, you can see in any Scorsese film, Spielberg film, it's just the camera move that kind of evokes that feeling. It's the camera move with which it almost doesn't matter who wrote the scene. The camera is adding the feel to it, right? And one of the things, I think one of the scenes that I absolutely love from the film Roma, which I passed out, it's called the chaos scene from Roma, and it's available on YouTube. What happens is that in this scene, even though it's chaos, what's happening outside is absolute chaos. There's this mob, there's hundreds and hundreds of people. The camera is slow. Alfonso Cuarón could have had the choice of putting the camera in the crowd and feeling the chaos, right? And it'll have a completely different rhythm. It's almost that he decides the rhythm of the scene by placing the camera away and moving it at this pace, right? So it's almost that he wants the audience to watch the chaos and not participate in it. And those are two very different things. If you see the opening of Saving Private Ryan, which is one of the most beautiful sequences when it comes to feeling subjective and being in the protagonist's head. That's the complete opposite of this scene, right? And that tells you how a director can choose and give you a rhythm by knowing where the camera is and what the camera is doing. So in this scene, so much is happening, but it's just the way the camera moves and how the camera kind of exposes slowly everything layer by layer, right? It's not big wide shot and then doing close-ups. It's not revealing everything in one go. It's revealing the way the director wants it to be. It's almost like a good player opening their cards, right? It's almost like he's unfolding the scenes a certain way for the audience to enjoy and absorb the information a certain way. And hence, for me, this is a great example for camera bringing in rhythm. So this scene could be shot a whole completely different way and it will not have the same rhythm, right? So same dialogue, same actors, same blocking, and the camera would change and everything would change. So this is where I feel a great craftsman will come in and design this. And it's almost that he knows his design before the edit. The entire film, you can see that he knows the design of the camera before he knows the edit. He knows how he wants to edit it. And regardless of the dialogue, the camera does the trick here, you know? So this is another prime example of using camera as a tool.
You know, Shakun, I want to now come to the scene that you'd actually picked out for the session. You know, that so that all of the preamble that we've just, you know, kind of gone through, all of that comes together in the scene. So let's first look at the scene and then we can talk about it.
अर्जुन राहुल अरे आ जाओ भाई देखो चाचू आ गए
And finally, Chachu, Chachi.
You
Looking nice.
How was the cruise?
Yeah, huh? और भाई लड़ी क्या?
He's so excited about his new wheelchair.
Don't worry about it. हमने एल्गिन में रूम बुक कर लिया.
दादी होट में रहने वाला है.
मुझे पट्टे तू अपने घर आया तो कहीं घर हो गया रहेगा. और सुनो भाई, कल मैंने फोटो लेनी है पूरे परिवार की, दीवार पर लगानी है. ओए, वो तेरा वो डफर है ना वो.
हाँ आ जाएगा फोटोग्राफर.
धर्मेंद्र बैग लेके जा.
बैग अंदर कमरे में रख दो.
आ जाओ खाना खाने जल्दी. आ जाओ.
सुनीता देखो मुझे क्या मिला रूम में. Gorgeous pictures.
अरे ये हमारे हनीमून की है.
Some wine for the hard-working ladies.
Thank you.
Wow. भाभी, इसे भी कुछ सिखाओ ना.
Shut up, just go ना. सुनीता, टिनी को बोलो ना कुछ रेसिपीज ईमेल करे. शारिक just loves this stuff.
कह दो कि उसे कल ही ईमेल कर देगी.
भाभी, ये कस्टर्ड बहुत बढ़िया बना है.
बस तू यहीं रह जा मेरे पास.
Thank you.
वो खट्टे एक दिक्कत है मेरे.
नहीं डैड, आपको अलाउड नहीं है. डॉक्टर ने मना किया.
ओ यार एक
रीता देखो, बिल्कुल वहीदा रहमान लग रही है.
देखो वहीदा रहमान को देखो. Oh wow, seriously? देख तो रही. दिखा चेक करिए.
You don't
look like that.
But please यार, तुझसे बहुत ज्यादा हैंडसम था मैं.
शशि के लिए और मेरे लिए यहाँ लाइन लगती थी लड़कियों की लंबी.
चुप भाई, वो लाइन लगती थी.
सही कह रहे हैं आप.
दादी का क्या नाम था?
तेरी दादी चली गई थी.
जो भी हो यार.
I miss those days.
उन यादों को मैं करोड़ों रुपए के लिए भी ना बेचूं.
ओहो चाचू.
करोड़ लेके तो पॉटी खा लेगा. तुम सब 10 करोड़ के लिए पॉटी खा लोगे.
Sarek will eat it for $50.
ये सिर्फ लड़कियों के लिए रखा है या?
No.
तलब मेमो सुना दे.
अनु मलिक bro.
हाँ अनु मलिक है. मोहम्मद रफी भैया.
अरे पर राहुल भी गाता है. Come on राहुल, you.
Come on
राहुल भैया.
बजा राहुल. Please. वो तेरे डैड का फेवरेट.
हाँ जो संगीत पे गाया था.
मैंने गाया
यार. चांद सी महबूबा.
पेश करते हैं लता जी की आवाज में राहुल जी.
बजाइए.
So, Shakun, I'm going to follow your trajectory and ask you first of all, like on paper and on camera, what is it that you wanted to, what is the feeling you wanted to evoke with this scene?
Yeah,
what is it you wanted to get to?
Since we are talking about rhythm and I tried to define it saying it's the design to evoke a feeling. It sounds pretentious and like esoteric, but yeah, I mean, I think if you can, you know, just look at it, I think the thing that I was trying to evoke was nostalgia and intimacy, right? because I think this family, we had seen them fight a lot, we'd seen them argue a lot in the film, and this is the place in the film where I wanted people to feel that, oh, they could be so nice, right? If they didn't fight, if they came together, it'll be so, like, I wanted to give this warm, fuzzy feeling, right? I wanted them to feel intimate. I wanted to kind of bring nostalgia, because this is how I felt during my sister's wedding Sangeet practices. This is the feeling I felt. And in my head, that was the feeling. I was like, I wanted to feel when my chachas came over, and this song is, by the way, that my chacha would play this song and then people would dance. And I wanted that nostalgia and intimacy from there to come into it, right? So if that's the feeling I'm going for, how do I design all the elements to give me that feeling, right? So let's start with dialogue. It needed to sound chaotic and overlapping, but not chaotic the way we've seen it in Plumber Scene, which is at the beginning of the film. You know, there it's chaos and dysfunctional, and people are not getting along. Here it's chaos trying to create intimacy, right? So overlapping dialogues, even when they are in the kitchen, you can hear the dialogues from the living room. So it feels that they're together, right? So the dialogues, there were a lot of extra dialogues written for the scene, even though I knew that we'll never see that dialogue in the film. But it was written to kind of create that sense of everybody's back, everybody's in the room, they're all talking over each other. So, you know, that's what I was trying to do. And then coming down to blocking and camera movement, if you see, actually the camera is not doing too much apart from the beginning when it's coming together, right? In the beginning, the camera just kind of trying to basically, what I'm trying to do with the camera is put the audience in between these people. So I'm not watching, I'm making you come and participate as one of the members. So the camera is constantly between them, right? So you're constantly in the crowd. You feel like one of them. When somebody's hugging, you feel really close to them, because I also want to give a sense of intimacy, right? So if you see, there are very few wide shots, because I don't want you to watch. I want you to participate. I want you to feel like one of them. So that's the camera. And the blocking was, again, I wanted, one of the things that I felt odd about in Hindi films is, like, even if you see Hum Aapke Kaun, big party scenes, people will come and they just stand and talk. Like, I'll stand here, you stand here, you stand. So it's like a theater happening. Like, people just come and stand and talk. But I'm just like, we are not in a theater. It's not a stage. People in my house or in your house, we move. You know, while talking, you will go to the bathroom and keep talking, and somebody will go hug, but go and sit on the sofa in the same line, right? So I wanted to create that design is like, you're hugging this person, but you're talking to somebody else, and you're hearing something else, and you're reacting to that person. So blocking and camera work was designed with trying to kind of accentuate that feeling, that chaos. And same thing with editing. You know, I wanted to feel overwhelmed with so many people in the house, right? So, like, it's cutting if you see a lot of reactions of the kid, and then somebody saying something, and then the dogs come out, and Siddharth's playing with the dog. And so I'm designing in the edit all these, like, quick cutaways that are not necessary for the dialogue. It's not necessary for the information, but it's necessary for the feeling I want. It's necessary for the mood I want to create, right? So the rhythm of the scene is different than how it would be if you just shot the dialogues, right? And that's because, as I said, I want to create intimacy. I want to find intimacy in chaos, right? So that's what I was trying to go for. And one of the other elements we'll also talk about rhythm, and the tool for designing rhythm is music, right? Is music sometimes can just change the rhythm of the scene. And part of the reason, as I said, I put the song in there is because I saw it in my family, and I wanted something more than just dialogues to bring that feeling, you know, of them being together. And that's where I think the music came in, and it really did add so much to the feeling of, unfortunately we can't play it because of copyrights, but that really added to that thing. And as I said, when I watch all the other great directors, when I see them, that's what I'm always in awe of, is that they are working on their craft at so many levels, starting right from dialogue to camera, to blocking, to editing, to music. It's all in there. And I just don't know how they do it, you know, and I feel like that's the one part where I'm going to keep learning. I want to keep evolving. You know, I still don't think I understand staging really well. So for me, the difference between blocking and staging is that blocking is just moving the actors and then just like, oh, let's put the camera here, put the camera here. But staging is keeping camera and actors designed together, right? Like the way Spielberg or Scorsese does it. Like camera is not independent of the blocking. It's almost like camera and actors are in a dance together, that they're dancing together. If he does something, the camera will do that, you know? So like when you watch even something like Catch Me If You Can or any Scorsese film, oh my God, like sometimes you just sit there and you just keep playing it again and again and wonder. Casino, right? I was watching Casino a few days ago, and that whole sequence in the casino when they are showing how De Niro runs the place. Dude, that design is everything. You know, the way the camera, the edit, the music, the way the push-ins, you know, that push-in's not part of the dialogue. That push-in is just, it's just there to kind of give you that feeling of like, whoa, who's this guy, right? So yeah, you know, I think these elements can really add up. And sorry, I know we are talking more about the scene, but as I said, two more elements that I would love to talk about. I think edit. And one of the examples that we gave, which we've shared with the people here, is a scene from Out of Sight. It's called the bar scene from Out of Sight. And I think at 2 minutes 33 seconds on that video, you will see that it's purely the design of the edit that's setting the rhythm. And so give you a little trivia on this scene is that this scene was written as two separate scenes, right? When Soderbergh read the scene, he said, you know what? We're going to intercut the two scenes. And then when the writer came on set, he saw Soderbergh direct the scene and he's like, what is he doing? Like, what is he doing? This is not how the scene's written. It's too slow. It's never going to work. And, you know, he was starting out, so he didn't say much, but he went back really upset. And then Soderbergh called him in and he showed him how he intercut the scene, and it changed everything. And that's where edit comes in. It's like it can change the rhythm that the writer had completely and give it a new feeling. So the scene wasn't written with this kind of feel and rhythm and pace. The scene was written with a much more aggressive pace. And Soderbergh came in and he's like, no, I'm going to design it like this and I'm going to cut it like that. So I think it's a great example of how to set rhythm with edit. With music and edit together, I think music, take any Scorsese film and you know how he uses music. Take any Wes Anderson film and you know how he designs music, right? Take Rushmore, just long tracking shots and the music changes everything you feel about those shots, right? And the scene that I also shared here was a scene from Whiplash. It's called The Out of Tune Trombone Kid. Again, it's a scene available on Whiplash, and just the design of the scene, and it's from the writing stage. The scene is written like this, you know, the way he cuts it, the way he kind of, the music comes in, the way the music overtakes the scene. And, you know, in this case, rightly so, because it's a movie about music, right? So the way the music is above all other craft, all the other aspects of craft are following the music. So music's on top, editing after that, camera after that, and performance kind of layering all of that. But it's music and edit on top. So unlike the dialogue on top, which is a Sorkin example that we gave, which is a scene in the court, here the music comes on top. So I think as a director, you think of these things early on. It's like, am I going to cut this scene a certain way? Am I going to cut this scene a certain kind of music? Or can I just go and kind of freestyle on this, right? So those are the decisions, as I said, those are the things I like to think of beforehand, before I go on set. You know, a sense of edit, a sense of music, not necessarily I'll stick to it. And similarly, you know, Fincher, before he went to Atticus Ross for the score of A Social Network, he had a completely different score in mind. And he gave them the thing. And if you hear, Fincher talks about the track he wanted to use, and I forget what the track was, but literally the score changed everything on Social Network. You know, it's this kind of simmering undertone, pads. It just gave it so much more conflict and an internal conflict, which wouldn't have been possible without the score. So yeah, sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, not at all. Shakun, carry on. But, you know, before I open this out for questions, I just wanted to ask you that who controls the rhythm? because there are many creators or co-creators of rhythm, but who controls the rhythm across the board?
Right. So, see, the crazy megalomaniac, egocentric thing would say director, but it's really collaboration. Yes, I think the director will have the final call. He on the edit table, because mostly DOPs are not going to be there. You could change the rhythm of a scene. So yes, I think a director could make those very important decisions that will affect how the scene feels. But I think what happens sometimes is, like a composer, in the case of Social Network, will make such a great contribution that I think like he literally changes what the director had. And in case of Social Network, Fincher kept saying that. It's like, I didn't have that track. I didn't have that feeling. It's just that. And then Fincher started to tell them to compose, and he would cut the scene to the composer's stuff. So it can change. You see, yes, director can be open to that idea. It's like, sometimes I do that. Is like, I will be like, oh, that's a really good score. Now let me change the rhythm of the scene. So yes, it could change, but I think director has to make most of those decisions. How open is he to changing what at what time? Yeah.
I have a bunch of questions from people who are watching this on Facebook. Onomitro Banik wants to know that does the actor's interpretation and mannerisms towards approaching dialogues change the beat in your films?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it could do that, but in a minor way, and I think actors can contribute a lot, lots in terms of, how they say it, but also like in the case of Social Network, it was very, very defined from very early on how the actors will speak the dialogues. And I think there are those kind of films where like even if you look at Javed Akhtar Saab's or Salim Saab's dialogues, the way they were written with a certain kind of value. It had to be said a certain way, right? So it depends what kind of film you're working on, what kind of, how much can an actor change that stuff. Like I know something about Dil Chahta Hai, that it was all locked in, it was written in the script, that every dialogue was in the script. And I've seen Farhan work. I was assisting Farhan. He doesn't like to change too much. So again, yes, it could change that, but somehow still a director is the one who can kind of control those things. You can see what the actors are doing and where you want to take it. Even when actors are improvising, it's not that they're improvising without any feedback, right? You as a collaborator are there to be like, oh, I love this, but let's not go here. Let's not go there. So I think as a director, you can still control it, right?
We were talking about actors. I have an actor asking a question on Facebook. Parvati Tiruvotto wants to know that how do you find the core rhythm that should not be changed at all while you allow many other aspects to expand the scene in a positive manner? Like, how do you identify those key narrative beats that you cannot compromise on?
I think it again comes from what do you want to say in a scene, right? And what you want to, what's the emotion you want to evoke in the audience? Because I think for me, that's everything. Is like I generally have a feeling in my head that I want the scene to have, and anything that takes away from that feeling, I don't do. I have to give you a great story here about one of the people that I learned a lot from is Raju Hirani, right? And Raju sir, I once directed an ad for him, which he was producing. And, I was like, it was one of my first commercials I did. And I really enjoy commercials, and back then I was like, oh, I'm just going to do a really cool cutting and I'm going to put macro lenses and I'm going to shoot it like this. And I went up to Raju sir and I was like, Raju sir, don't worry. I'm going to shoot it like this. I'm going to cut it like this. I'm going to have this kind of music. And he kept saying, wo sab sahi hai, kahani kya hai? So I'll be like, हाँ मतलब ये है, ये आएगा, ये ऐसे बोलेगा, ये हो गया. नहीं, वो सब सही है. Kahani kya hai? And I kept saying, why is this guy hell-bent on kahani? It's 30 seconds. It's going to be over before anybody knows the kahani. And he said it like 3-4 times over 2 meetings. And it changed everything about how I approach filmmaking now. What basically he was trying to say is, yeah, all your shots are fine. All your editing is fine. You can do all of this. It's all great. But what does he want to say? What does you want to communicate? What is it that you want audience to feel? And I think that's how you define the rhythm. It's like once you decide what is it you want to communicate and make the audience feel. Everything that's happening around you has to add to that feeling or has to add to that communication. And if it doesn't, it's chop chop, you know. Another great quote that I had thought I'll start the talk with so I can sound pretentious and cool, but I didn't because I forgot, is this Billy Wilder quote, which I read many years ago, and it, to be honest, didn't make sense to me back then. Somebody asked him, he was a writer-director, right? He used to write with a couple of co-writers and direct. So someone said, is it important for a director to know how to write? So he said, no, it's not important for them to know how to write, but it would definitely help if they know how to read. Now, it's a funny joke, like you laugh, ha ha ha, or so funny, but I actually understood that much later, that what he means by reading is that directors should be able to read and understand the interpretation or the rhythm of a scene. It's like you should be able to read a screenplay and understand what it needs to do to evoke a feeling. And that is another thing that I'm still trying to teach myself, because, you know, so far I've been directing some of the stuff I've written, but that's also part of the reason I love directing commercials, is because commercials generally are script written by other people. You know, they're short, but they come to you and then you're like, okay, what do I want to say in this? And that's thanks to Raju sir. Now it's about kahani kya hai. In fact, now I ask this question to most of my collaborators. You know, they'll be like giving me suggestion. I'm like, हाँ, ये सब सही है, kahani kya hai? And for me, that line has changed so much. It's genuinely, it's like, you know, how when you're paying attention to spirituality or meditation, the question is, who am I? Who am I? It's the who am I of storytelling. Kahani kya hai, kahani kya hai, kahani kya hai. The more you say it, the more you find what is important and what is not.
We've got a lot of questions now from the group that is joined us for this. So we are going to begin with Anu Singh Chaudhary. Anu Singh Chaudhary is a screenwriter. She's also an author, and I'm starting with her simply because of the fact that her first series that she's written just dropped on Amazon 2 days ago, called Arya.
Yeah, hi Shakun. Very basic questions actually. I'm actually at what is known as not the lowest rung, I wouldn't say that, but the first rung of the ladder which you're climbing, and you're finding the perspective from where you will see a story in the film. I'm a writer, therefore the
yes, I know, Anu. I was telling you, I just started Arya, and I absolutely love the first episode. So I'll have enough questions for you once I finish watching it. For now,
yeah, just two very basic questions. What is the role of storyboarding when you're beginning to understand the scenes and you begin to visualize it as a director? And the second thing is that too much description. I know there's a certain rhythm, and it must be on the script also, and the rhythm should come from the writer as well. But if there's too much description in a scene, does that hinder your creative process?
Yeah, so I'll break the question. The first one about storyboarding, I think it depends. It's always like every tool in prep is just to try get clarity and to be able to communicate with your collaborators. So it depends. As I said, for Kapoor and Sons, I made it a point not to storyboard because I wanted fluidity in how I saw the film.
Right.
But, you know, like for my first film, it was all kind of storyboarded. I knew kind of how I saw every shot because I was really at that point a big Wes Anderson fanboy, and I wanted to be like that guy, you know, who knew his shots and camera. So I think clarity is everything, right? It's if you're trying to find clarity with storyboarding, and not just for yourself, for your collaborators. And Coen brothers storyboard the entire film most of the times, right? So because again, it's got that rhythm. If you see Fargo, it's all the rhythm is from everything from composition to how it's cut and all of that. Sorry, your second question was outside of storyboarding. There was this.
Yes. If there's too much description written on paper, does that hinder the creative process?
Yes, you know, I started to, when I first wrote something which didn't even get made, I thought people would love me for how clearly I saw everything. So I will define how a lamp is placed on both sides of the bed, and the color of the wall, and the curtain moves slowly. And I was like, but this is not how the story is going to move. And now I just want to understand how the story is moving. You know, I think you just know You just need just about enough information to get the sense of mood of the room, and then it just needs to feel how it goes. So giving you an example of when Spielberg was working on Minority Report, he called the writer in and he said, listen, don't give me too much. Don't write just if a cop walks from car to a hotel, just write he steps out and rushes to the hotel. Don't give me the feeling of how the cop is stealing and running and rushing. Because I feel sometimes you get caught up in that, and sometimes it reads beautifully. There's a lot of times why sometimes novels don't turn into great screenplays is because the beauty is in the description of it. And yes, sometimes the movies are the same way. Sometimes a movie is beautiful because of how it looks and feels. But I think you should never get lost in descriptions. You should always be with the story. So anything that takes away from the story and it's just describing a feel, a mood, a shot, I think it should be quick. It should just, again, that's a personal choice I've come to now. So I don't like over descriptive stuff. I want to feel. I want to feel. I want to feel the tone of the scene. So if it's an aggressive walk, I just need to hear she walks aggressively. I don't need to understand how she's putting one step after the other. And I feel like some people write as if you can literally see the camera move. We do this and we feel that. I think sometimes it's important, if it's really crucial for that point in the film, for me to understand how the camera moves. But if it's not important for how the camera moves, I don't need to explain it. Like, just to give you a sense of the Kapoor and Son scene, I didn't have to say everyone does this and the camera feels like it's in the middle of it, it participates. No, I just wrote it's chaotically beautiful in my head. And that's it. That's enough. Chaotically beautiful in my head. Now I can interpret it. I know what I'm going to do with it, and I'll just go ba ba ba, and I'll do it. So things like that.
Firstly, thanks, Shakun. So this has been a really exciting session. I had a lot of doubts about staging and blocking and how and what a rhythm exactly is, and a lot of them I've been able to find answers to that. So my question basically was when you're staging, like while directing, when you're staging the actors and the camera, we often keep in mind the power dynamics of a scene, right? So for example, like if there is one character leading the scene, he'll be placed in probably like a better or a higher or a more powerful stage than the other actor. So while we've decided all of that, do we communicate that to the actors? Do we communicate the power dynamics to the actors? So if no, why? And if yes, does it not interfere with their performance or the way like they act out the scene?
Yeah, I personally feel, actors have so much going in their minds that you don't need to show them ki acha main apna bhi, I'll show you now what I have thought of. I really want actors to just stay in an emotional place in their head. I don't want to like burden them with now how I'm going to move my camera, or look how I'm going to light this scene, because they're in their headspace. You don't want to really screw with them, and also like I choose to speak to different collaborators in different ways. I don't want to start talking about like emotions and backstory with my cameramen, and I don't want to start talking about my camera to my actors, unless it's very crucial for me, unless I want an actor to move at a certain point because I want a certain look. I don't want to burden them. And I think smart actors have already done their work. They've already understood the dynamics of the scene. And I think that's one of the things I really learned on my second film, and I made those mistakes on the first film, is what not to communicate. I feel directors, especially on your first film, you're feeling so insecure that you want to show everyone that I'm the director. मेरे को सब पता है, मैंने सब करके आया हूँ, मेरे को पता है कैमरा कहाँ जाएगा, मेरे को लाइटिंग भी पता है, मेरे को एडिट भी पता है. Then I shut up in my second film. In my second film, the directing was about what not to say. It wasn't about what to say. I realized that you choose your people carefully. You choose people who understand how you want to tell the story, and then you speak less. And I'm a big believer and a big promoter of what not to direct. I think directing is all about what not to direct. Because yes, technically you can direct everything, but I don't want to. I personally don't like to go into all of that.
Got it. Thank you. That's
you.
a brilliant answer. That's just answers everything I had in mind. Like, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
If there's a very heavy dialogue scene, like a dialogue heavy scene, is there any scope for improvisation? Like the actors could improvise at the, at the location, and that's where, like, to get the rhythm right. Like, we already planned the rhythm at first.
Yes. But the thing is, actors, like sometimes when you work with really good actors, they understand rhythm also. So, every creative person, conscious, subconscious level, understands rhythm. So they will give you input. And, I was watching the scene, I was really missing Rishi sir, because as much as we fought on the set, he just had a timing for humor. You can't take that away from him. He just knew how to land a funny line. And when he did that, I didn't have to say what the rhythm was. He just knew, oh, I will drop the line at like this. And he would always say, "Arey nahi, tu usko aise mat kar, usko bole, fir main ye bolunga." So like, I feel actors also understand rhythm. And you as a director, I think so many times you as a director just have to learn how to be calm and absorb. Because I think as director, especially on the atmosphere on set is so chaotic that you just feel like I need to control everything. I need to do this. I need to tell that person. I need to tell this person. And now, as I said, now for me, it's all about being relaxed. It's all about hearing people and being able to judge what works for the scene and what doesn't. I've done my homework before, so I know my intention. And then I'm just like going with the flow. And it's like an ever evolving thing. It's not something that, you teach yourself once and it's done. Like every time I go on set, even now, I make the mistake sometimes of just being too active. And, sometimes I just want to show that I know it. And I think that's just a lesson in life is every time you think you know it, it's just something going wrong. So I do want to change that about myself, and I think that's a personal path I'm taking. It's not necessary that everyone has to go on that path, but I want to work with collaborators and then just be able to absorb and listen and then take those decisions, with a relaxed mind.
I wanted to ask you, have you ever felt like stuck or confused about finding the rhythm of a particular scene? Like you are stuck, like what is the rhythm of this scene? You are not able to bring to a conclusion about feeling that you want to convey to the audience. And if yes, then how did you figure that out? Like what helped you in the process?
That's a great question, actually. Yes, it's not have you ever. It's have I ever not. There has never been a time where I've understood the rhythm of a scene. It's almost like on the day before the shoot, you are still figuring out if you know what you want to do and how you want to do, right? And to be honest, a lot of time you don't figure it out. You know a lot of it, but you only figure it out once you start blocking and camera comes into play. Sometimes you figure it out in the edit and you will change the edit a certain way, right? I think the how do you solve that problem? Most of the time you solve it in the writing. And most of the time when you're finding yourself unsure of what the scene is, why the scene's not feeling right, it's in the writing. And my feeling and whatever little experience I have tells me is if you fucked it up in the writing, it's going to be very tough to fix it anywhere else. So even in the edit, actually, why it's called rewriting is because you're actually trying to fix the writing. You understand? Edit is still fixing the writing. So the problems you're fixing is the problems you didn't see before. And I find that a lot. Like I will write a scene, and when I'm shooting it, I'm sometimes thinking, I don't know what I've done wrong, and I think I've missed something and I can't feel it. I'm still working every day on the film I'm going to shoot next, and sometimes I'm still sitting like, I don't know, why does it not feel right? And it's something that you also have to, as a director, I have to tell you, this is something you never tell your producers in studio, is like you're always hoping God to be on your side. Like God will give you a sign on the day that will tell you something bigger that will help you direct. Yeah, I'm always looking for that moment. Yes, there is certain things I know or I have a feeling of I have in control, but so much of it is just like staying open. If you can stay open, it might happen to you. So it's a weird thing. And as I said, that's really the transition I'm making in my personal life is, can I stay open to things happening and me taking them and using them?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can we unmute the lovely Nasreen Muni Kabir, please?
Nasreen, hi. I just want to tell you, I'm a big fan. And when I first moved to the city, I picked up a book, Talking Films with Javed Saab. And it was one of the first things that I started reading. In fact, hold on. I still have it. It's right here.
Yes.
And I read it, and I think in this book there was something about dialogue writing and conversation, and how conversations are at 3 levels. Outer rung, there are 3 rungs of conversations in dialogue writing, and I think it was again one of those things that you read once and it changes how you approach things. So thank you for writing so much about films. It's really been helpful, and we need more people like you, or we just need you for another 100 years. So.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. Honestly, I'm very moved, and I think when I've been listening to you and Smriti, I really think, Shakun, you have such a grasp of filmmaking. I've interviewed a lot of filmmakers, and of course, each one has their own wisdom, but you have a grasp of the craft.
Thank you.
And that I find to be, extremely refreshing. And what you were saying is that somebody quoted something very good to me recently, and he said, it's an art to hide art.
Yeah, it's the highest form of art. That's all you need to strive for.
Yes. And I was wondering whether there was any particular film that influenced you for Kapoor and Sons, and I completely escaped my mind. There was a famous documentary about a Jewish family in New York. And for some reason, I was thinking of that Friedman, Meet the Friedmans.
Yeah, I've seen that, where we used to watch porn and it was all hidden and the FBI came in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I felt that scene that you showed, it had a slightly documentary feel. You described it as an intimacy, but it was also that I wondered how many cameras were involved in that scene.
So Nasreen, first of all, that's something I learned. As I said, in my first film, I was all about the craft. I wanted the world to know that I know how to frame a shot. I know everything. And I think I was watching Raging Bull, maybe the 3rd or 4th time. And I was trying to understand the structure of writing, the screenplay structure of Raging Bull. And it dawned on me that the reason the script was so good is that they had hidden all the structure. It didn't feel like structure anymore. It felt fluid. It started to flow like water. And that's the moment I was like, damn, that is so much more, that now I do a pass on my work, which I call hiding the craft pass, which is me looking at a scene and be like, what here is obvious? And then I'm like, how do I hide the obvious? Because the obvious is the thing that the audience really catches on to, right? And that's why in Kapoor and Sons, with Fawad's character especially, because I wanted him to portray this gay man who comes out of the closet in the end, I was like, I want to give hints, but it can't be obvious. So there is a scene where Fawad and his mother are talking and she's drying clothes. And it's all about Fawad sussing out if his mom would ever be comfortable with knowing this. But it's all about hiding what he wants to say, that the scene gets his value from. So I can't agree with you more. In fact, I feel as long as I make films, the journey that doesn't stop is, how do you hide your craft? Because I think that is an ever evolving thing, is because you can feel so much more if you do not know how it's like magic. If I don't show you how I'm doing it, you are so much more in awe of it.
Absolutely.
So as a filmmaker, if I don't show you why you are feeling what you're feeling, you're going to feel more of it.
Yes, because then you allow the viewers to get into the story and into characters. Otherwise, like for example, Birdman, you're so conscious of where the camera is and you keep looking for the edit that you actually it doesn't involve you so much.
I agree with you.
It involved me for that reason.
No,
but
I
don't
agree
want to monopolize you because there are lots of other questions, but I'm extremely impressed by your understanding of film, and there's so much you could talk about, and really.
Thanks a lot, Nasreen. Coming from you, as I said, I've read your books, and I really see the kind of love and admiration and see, with the amount of seriousness you do your work. And I think, as I said, as a filmmaker, like obviously, I'll make bad films for sure at some point in my life. But and I've already, I think my first film I really cringe about. My second film I'm okay with. But the one thing that I hope is that I can be sincere to my craft, and I feel like that if I can stick to that that kind of that idea religiously, I think that would mean a lot to myself. So for you to say it, I feel great. But yeah, that's what my attempts are.
Yes, I think you have an interesting mix of confidence and humility, and if you keep that balance going, you'll be fine.
Sure. If I ever get too big-headed, I'll call you. Just give me a reality check.
Please, Smriti has my number.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nasreen. Thank you.
Shakun, 2 questions, man. One is that we saw all the scenes that you shared, and I read a 3-part structure in each of the scenes, except I'm not too sure if it was there in the outer side scene. But there seemed to be like a duration-wise 3-part structure of the beats of the scene. Is that sort of an unset thumb rule that directors and editors like to follow? Or am I just reading too much into it, or it's not really there? It's something that I am imagining.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, because I mean, there was a time where I gave a lot of importance to 3-act structure, and I think it's been there since the time Aristotle spoke about it. But I think what's interesting is anything dramatic ends up having a 3-act structure. Even when you didn't know the 3-act structure, there was a 3-act structure. It's like when your mothers and your grandmothers told you a story, it had a 3-act structure, right? And it's just how stories become interesting. So even if you just did something completely by instinct, the chances are that it'll fall in that. But where it comes handy is when you are editing it and you don't know why it's feeling like this. Then you try to understand where in the structure you are, and then you try to like give it that, right? It's like you can't have a climax before the climax. You can't have a big payoff before the climax, because it won't feel right. Your climax will start feeling small. So there is a graph to storytelling, right? Whether it's 3-act, 5-act, the circular one, hero's journey, and it's those things. Even if you know it or not know it, those things kind of exist. And I think it's just. I don't know if it's a principle or a law, but it's there, it ends up there. But you're right. I think in scenes there would be, it starts here, it goes up, it peaks, and then it resolves. It could have that. Not necessarily always. So I don't think if there's a right or wrong, but I think it's a thing that just on its own, you can find it in a lot of things. And maybe we are reading too much, because I don't think it's intended at all times, but sometimes it's just there by coincidence, and sometimes there by choice. Like if we see the scene that I was talking about, the Kapoor and Son scene, it would feel like it has a 3-act structure. The family comes, there's chaos, it all peaks with the music, and then it resolves at the end shot of them under the window. So yes, there is a 3-act structure. But was I writing into the 3-act structure? No, I wasn't. It helped me in the edit to kind of give it that feeling, right? That it should rise and then it should resolve. So that.
So my second question is, Shakun, I'm an actor, I pay my bills by acting.
Of course, I've seen your stuff. Yeah.
Is there a healthy, smart way, without pissing off the director or the collaborator you're working with, and get a sense of what rhythm he is looking for in the scene? As a collaborator, are there like smart ways or especially when you sense the director saying wo energy nahi hai, or yeah wo bahut jaldi ho gaya? How do you sync in with the rhythms of collaborators, especially as an actor director?
So, again, as I said, I think for me, it's becoming more about how less I do it, right? So it's not about sitting with an actor and be like, listen, I must tell you the rhythm of the scene. I can't speak like that. It's just something internal and it's elusive and it's tough to explain. So I'd never, as a rule now, try to explain something that is going to be hard for someone to interpret, because I feel that becomes another problem. Now you've said something and now that person has to interpret how you're seeing it in your head, which is a complete fuck up, right? So I don't do much. I literally feel all these things can happen by just saying little faster, little slower, take a little moment here. You are maybe you're maybe thinking about something else, so don't, or be more definitive. Can you be little unsure? And I think you start to pick up on these words, and these words are literally, man, they're the best words. Be unsure, be more definitive, just be more, when you're saying this, you are thinking about this. It's like you get there, but you get there in indirect ways. You never speak about what you are trying to do. You're trying to achieve it, but you're trying to throw different things and see what one. I mean, Vidaf, I can later. I have a list of words that I picked up and made over the years, and I have it on my laptop somewhere. Which. Actually, a lot of time I pick those words up from scripts. In parentheses in script under dialogues, they'll have how it is said. And those words were really like, again, a new learning for me. And now I speak just in those words. I really think the lesser, the quicker you can explain yourself to an actor, and the quicker an actor can ask you a question, the better it is. Yes, once in a while you have to get into conversation. You have to ask about the scene and why it's feeling like this. And sometimes an actor will come and point out the problem with the scene or the writing of the scene. And you can have that, but I think with rhythm, really, generally, just try using these things. Like, do you want me unsure? Do you want me to take this word as if I'm in a more definitive way? Do you want me to be more aggressive? Should I be more timid, softer? And I think you can find the rhythm with that. So yeah.
Thanks.
I'll be honest. Another thing, what I sometimes don't enjoy is like a half a page scene and having like a 5-page conversation about that half a page scene. Like, I'm just like, give me a break, dude. I need to go shoot this thing, So it's just like, I'll tell you a damn funny scene. So I was in Kapoor and Sons. There was this, and I'm not a very expressive director, to be honest. I don't compliment actors and I don't go, wow, that's amazing. I'm just always like, yeah, that's good. Sure, move on, And there was this scene where Siddharth was just taking the dog out for a walk and the dog has to pee. Now, I mean, I can't direct the fucking dog. He's going to pee when he's going to pee, right? But the dog fucking pees on cue. And I flip out and I just start like praising the dog. And all the actors just look at me and be like, you've never done this to us. You have never been so happy with any of our performances. And like, I was really trying to like direct the dog in that moment. So dog is the only thing I've ever tried directing. I think actors are smart. They can do what they have to do. So it's just it's a conversation.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is, you referenced Social Network a lot. So I've seen a lot of Fincher's commentaries of his movies, which he releases with every Blu-ray. So almost every time the cast says that Fincher knows his character so well that all they have to do is just copy Fincher. Right. So do you also take a similar approach, or do you let the actors interpret their characters in their own way? Or do you give them a briefing?
I know what you're talking about, Fincher, and I'm a fan. I listen to his commentaries. I've listened to his interviews. So yes, he knows his characters well, but it doesn't mean that he's speaking the part to the actors. That's not the truth. He knows the characters psychologically. He understands the character's mind. It doesn't mean he's giving them line readings. It's not that he's reading the lines to them how they have to say it back. I think that's the most. This is my personal thing. I think that's a very insulting way to work with somebody. If you're going to tell them what to do, how to do, you should not hire them. I also feel actors feel small when you do that. And I feel they know their job better than you know their job. So let them do that. But yes, he understands the character's psychology and mind. So he will tell you where you are coming from and why you need to feel and deliver a certain way for the scene because of where you are coming from. So let me give you an example of Fincher. If you follow Fincher, is when he was doing House of Cards, Robin Wright, right? Am I right? Robin Wright? Is that
Yeah, Robin Wright.
Robin Wright.
Robin
Robin
Wright.
Wright walks up to Fincher and she's like, I'm not sure. I'm not getting this. She just read the 1 episode or 2 episodes and she's trying to figure out the character. And Fincher told her, and this is when series had just begun, kind of the idea of series in a big mainstream way. And Fincher said, listen, this is not a film. So do not think of your character from this episode. Series is all about character consistency over time, character behavior over time. So you do not decide, you only understand a character by their behavior over time, just like you'll see Walter White from Breaking Bad. It's not about defining yourself in the 1 episode. You have 10 episodes to define your graph, 10 episodes to define your journey. So that's what he means. He understands the psychology and he understands that not everything in their character has to be understood in that 1 second. It has to be understood over the story. So that for me is a learning again. And yes, again, Aditya, I mean, I could be wrong. I know of directors who do line readings and they get great results. Unfortunately, I just don't belong to that school. I feel it's wrong. Unless an actor comes to you and he wants you, or unless you've written the scene with a very precise speaking style. I know that another example, which is I think it's Bullets Over Broadway, Woody Allen. And I think he shot a bunch of stuff with Diane Weiss. And then he took her to watch a film called Pygmalion. And he showed the film and he says, that's what I want you to do. And she understood it. And then you see that Woody Allen has copied that kind of speaking style in a bunch of his films. So it can be helpful, but I also think that even if you're going to do it, you have to find a very, very respectful way of doing it. You should never impose it on an actor. It's not something. It's like an actor coming and telling you where to put the camera. You won't like it, right? So it's the same thing.
So my question actually is basically I wanted to ask, like how you mentioned in a heated up scene or like a dysfunctional scene in Kapoor and Sons, for example, when there is this ensemble cast is talking about a particular thing, they're discussing or they're arguing about a particular thing, and how there are external factors that you have included, whether it's like the plumber scene or even in the climax scene when the Chacha is trying to question Fawad before he's trying to break in through the window in Ratna Pathak's room. So all I wanted to ask was, like, these external factors that we add, how do we make sure that these don't deviate us from the main subject that they are talking about or they are having an argument about, like whether it's the plumber trying to say something or whether it is, and how does that influence when you're writing then to finally blocking and shooting, or in edit what finally makes it?
No, it's in the writing only, because what happens, I feel the other way. I feel agar we keep writing about what the scene is about, it becomes boring, right? Like if all you understood from a scene is what the scene is about, it's not fun. And as Nasreen brought it, it's about hiding it, right? So you are trying to distract your audience by throwing something else out there, which takes away from the information. So the information doesn't feel like information. So it's also, I think another thing of writing is like, how do you write information so it doesn't feel like information, which is called exposition, and how do you hide exposition? So you're just trying to hide exposition. That's how it works. And just so you know, the scene in the kitchen is not that. The scene in the kitchen is actually information. I'm establishing the album in their hand that will come out in 3 scenes later and bring the nostalgia. So the album is being established in these scenes. And then she's talking about the recipe, which will then come 5 scenes later, for which she has to then open her laptop where she will see Fawad's thing. So it's a setup. So these are kind of hidden setups that will pay off later.
Shakun, I wanted to ask you that when we are doing some genre-specific film like thriller or murder mystery, there are certain ways to do it with your camera and the styling or the design of the shot and everything. But when we are going for slice of life or a mumblecore kind of film, as you said, film is a medium, you tell a story through camera. So how can we use camera or designing shots for mumblecore or a slice of life kind of films to design the narration? Because I just did a web series which was kind of talky and everything, and I felt I want to have a longer shots of their conversation, but I'm not sure if that works always. Or
I understood.
Yeah.
So just so you know, Mandar, the non-design of mumblecore is the design of it. The reason it's non-design is because it doesn't want to feel design. So you can do what you want. Nobody will stop you. You can do a slice of life with really edgy shots, but you have to ask yourself: is it going to contribute to the feeling you want, or is it going to take away from the feeling you want? So if I design this beautiful shot coming from aerial shot that comes all the way to the car and then follows this one person in a mumblecore film, nobody can stop you. But is it going to give you the feeling you want? The reason mumblecore films stays away, or even, if you look at the Dogma 95, those school of filmmaking changed some of the things because the design they wanted to follow was to the non-design. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's by choice you are denying the design. So it's in your conscious decision. You can do what you want. Nobody can stop. Nobody stopped the French New Wave when they were breaking the rules. They just went ahead and did it. So you can do what you want. You just have to ask yourself: is it gonna add to the feeling or not?
I had a question to ask. Of course, I've seen the film, I don't know, a zillion times, and I think you brought the cracks in the family, and each individual is going through their own, let me say, a lonely journey. Each one is fighting a little battle, right? So I wanted to ask you that why did you choose a hill station house? Did you want to show that the expanse of the house is so big and yet everybody is lonely? And because when you have your chacha and the whole family come in, they're together, but yet they're not together. So was that a conscious decision, or the setting could have been in a Bombay or a Delhi or something like that? Like, what made you choose an external space?
Now that you're making it sound deeper than it is, I'll just agree with you. It makes it sound nicer and smarter. The reason I'm here, I told Smriti, is I just want to sound smart. To be honest, no. I mean, I think that's the funny thing is so many things just happen. I'll tell you. Okay. Yes, I was writing it for a small town. I'll tell you why I was writing it for a small town. No reason for me to have this spatial. I'm not Michael Haneke where everything has a bigger meaning. I don't think like that. I'm genuinely pre-surface level in most ways. Reason I was writing it for a small town is because when they come back, they have to bump into each other, right? He bumps into Tia, Alia's character, and he bumps into his friend at the hospital. So I was trying to go for what I call a reunion film, where somebody comes back home and they start meeting all these people who they haven't met for a while. And, that kind of invokes a feeling. And if you write, I think it's a subgenre of a family genre called reunion films. There are a bunch of them where people come back home, and it always feels nice when they meet people they haven't met. So I was like, oh, it'll be nice, small town, somebody will bump into. Actually, Garden State was another film that I loved, really. Yes. And, he goes back to New Jersey and he starts bumping into his friends and he bumps into this girl. And I wanted that feeling, right? But that feeling is almost not real in a city. In Bombay, you don't bump into people just like that. You don't just show up at someone's house for a party. It doesn't happen. So I was writing it for Darjeeling, and I was in Darjeeling when I was writing it. And I wasn't like sure if it's working out. I was looking at even in the scene, you know, he says, "Humne Elgin mein hotel book
kiya hai."
book kar liya." Elgin was the hotel I was staying in Darjeeling. That's why it says Elgin Hotel, because I was there and I was like, we'll write this. And then I was in Kannur for a friend's birthday party. And I was just like, what is this place? You know, like, holy shit, like this place is so beautiful. And then my friend took me, he grew up there. And Imran, you know, the actor who acted in my first film, he had grown up in Kannur. So then he took me for a walk to the cemetery where Alia and Siddharth,
yeah.
You know, so he took me there and I was just like, dude, like this city, this little town is so beautiful. I literally came back and I started to revise and rewrite everything, because when I saw the town, it just added so much more to the feeling I had that I wanted to explore. So then I rewrote everything for Kannur, and that's why the cemetery came in and all of that came in, and you know, all of that happened.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Shakun from America. So I wanted to talk to you about... Huh?
What time is it for you?
It is 6 a.m. right now.
Fuck. Sorry to do this to you, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm more than happy to be here. So I'm a student right now, and as I grow in filmmaking, I'm developing my voice and what I bring specifically to my films. And something I really love about your films is how you balance these elements of realism and real family drama, but you still have that lighthearted kind of Bollywood flair, but you're not dependent on it. And I just want to know what gives you confidence in your voice, how you've developed your voice, and how that translates into the rhythm and blocking and things like that.
Wow, that's a good question. I think when I started out, I didn't even know my voice. I didn't know what it is. And I think what happened, and I heard Tarantino speak about it, and I think he was bang on point about it, is that you start by imitating. You start by admiring somebody and trying to imitate that. But because of your own imperfections, you can never imitate it 100%, right? So you will see your own flaws, your own mistakes, and then you continue on that process. And on the process to kind of be better, because you're not good enough, right? So you want to be better. So you are looking at the masters, you're looking at others, and you're trying to get there. But in your process of trying to be better, you start to see something that's more you than them. And, you know, I'm still imitating filmmakers, you know, I'm still aspiring to be like somebody. And because of my own conditioning and my own beliefs, my own, for lack of a better example, my own craft, I end up doing something which is more true to me. And I think I will post this after this conversation. If you just follow me on Instagram, I'll post this. I'll find the link. There's this beautiful talk by Tarantino about how he found his voice. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a process. And I also think voice is not something that once you find it, it stops, right? With every film, you will find something more, find something more. In fact, I feel like if the next film doesn't make you look deeper or look for something to be able to tell that story better, then it's going to get boring. So I would say, look at the people you enjoy watching, look at how they do it, and try to do it. And in the process of doing it, you will find your own rhythm. You'll find your own taste. So if you see my first film, which, as I said, I cringe about, I was immature, I feel, it's really borrowing from Wes Anderson. By the way, there's a great Damien Chazelle interview, which is also on YouTube, where he talks about ripping from other people, like ripping off other films. You know, like he was in his style trying to take from Scorsese, the way he moved his camera, the way the music came in. You know, Scorsese did this music called New York, New York, which is also about music. So he's trying to kind of imitate that, and within that he finds his own style. So I'd say don't be over. I think it's okay to not be original from the word go. It's okay. You know, I think you find yourself sometimes in trying to imitate, and don't judge yourself for that early on.
Thank you very much.
So my question was revolving around uncertainty. I was super curious about when you're on set and you're directing and like that, you're always on this cusp of control and clarity, but then something emerges, especially when you allow improvisation to occur, or you already have a set script. So I'm just trying to find how do you really find this balance, and how do you work with uncertainty and channel it in your favor?
I read a great quote about balance, we tend to think of balance as just being calm and like look at things and be that, but the way they define balance is like a surfer on a surfboard. Like there's chaos around you at all times, and you are really trying your best to stay normal, right? So it's not that when I say balance, it doesn't mean that I'm not anxious. It doesn't mean that I'm not feeling uncertain. I am feeling uncertainty. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling not sure. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make decisions within the chaos. And that's your job as a director, is you're still trying to make decisions. And I think what you try to do is you try to hold on to, for me, I hold on to either a feeling or a description of the scene in my head. Sometimes it's music. Sometimes I just put on a headphone and I know that music informs me of what the scene is. So I will just keep that plugged into my ears through the day. And that song will play on loop. And that just like that is what's reminding me of what I want. So when everything is going crazy, I'm just like, I want this because it feels right to this, right? So the whole end sequence of Kapoor and Sons, of like everyone coming together for a photograph, I had like a headphone on this. I wasn't even listening to the dialogue. I didn't care about the dialogues. I just had like a headphone because I could see everything else will work out, right? So when the camera moved and somebody moved and it felt right to the music, I knew it would work. So, I mean, and it worked, thank God. I hope it worked. But yeah, so you gotta hold on to that one thing that you know is true, and you know it's true, and then navigate yourself through the chaos.
Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to know, like, what is the process about going to a recce, and how do you get along with, blocking and staging the whole scene when you are at the recce? So, I mean, it does short change when you actually go on shoot, and how do you get along with the whole process of discussing it in the recce and shooting it actually on the set? How does it change?
So I like to divide it in two things, recce and tech recce. They are two different things. You generally go to a location twice, right? The first time I go around, I'm generally just trying to understand the vibe of the location. Like, it doesn't matter what my shot is, unless it's very specific, right? I'm just trying to get a feeling. Does it feel like it's from my story? Does it feel like it belongs to my world where I'm trying to set the film? And it generally pretty much, as soon as you walk in, you can start to feel it. A little bit looking around, up, down, this, that, you feel it. So I'm not overthinking it, right? I'm just like, I get it. Once I lock a location after the recce, I start to relook at the scene and read it and be like, okay, how would it work in that location? So then when I go back for my tech recce, I'm now reading the scene and walking through the location. And I'm like, okay, where would this happen? Would it happen here? Would this happen here? Generally pull out my iPhone and just fucking go around, put an assistant here, try and move shit. And I will get broadly to like a 30-40% of what I want. Just to know that the location will allow me. Unless it's a shot specific scene where the scene is defined by my shots, which has also happened a couple of times where I would sit for a small location. I went there for 2 days, full 12-hour days, and I will just sit and I will take an iPhone and be like, move this, move that. Will it happen like this? Will it not happen like that? And then it's a little bit of both. You're trying to fit the scene in the location and fit the location in the scene. So it'll never happen 100%. It's not that you will find a dream location that will just fit your scene 100%. So then is the process of rewrite. Once I've got the vibe, I've understood the vibe, I've gone for my tech recce, I've seen how the camera will work, and I now know that I have to change the scene or trim the scene or expand the scene. Then I will come back and I rewrite. Then generally before the day of the shoot, if it's a very important scene, I would go back to the location and relook at the location one more time before coming on the day of the shoot. So yeah, that's my process.
So the thing is, oftentimes with the rhythm, what a lot of filmmakers do is they try to use the similar principles from music, and they try to incorporate it in film. Okay, so sometimes like there is a crescendo, and then there is a build up. Look, I don't understand music that much, but they try to use similar principles. And oftentimes, you could see in certain films that they often use contrast. So sometimes the scene starts from something very silent, and by the end of the scene there is like the scene goes very loud. So like these two simple things, like the principles from music and the principle of contrast, basically. Have you ever used it yourself, or like what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, see, I mean, anything that starts small and becomes big will have a graph. Similarly, anything that starts big and becomes small will have a graph, right? So yes, I don't think it's definite or needed for every scene, but those things work. So if you look at the social network scene, what I like about it, just to give you an example of what you're saying, all of Mark Zuckerberg, which is Mark Zuckerberg's dialogues, are one word, two words, one word, two words, one word, two words, right towards the end, and everybody else is speaking a lot more. Everybody else is speaking a lot more. And towards the end of the scene, Mark Zuckerberg gives the big thing and everybody else goes small. So of course it's a design, right? And it gives it a rhythm. That's the idea of giving rhythm by dialogue, is that it's conscious design that he will speak in short dialogue, short dialogue, short dialogue, short dialogue. Everybody else will speak in big dialogues, big dialogues, big dialogues. And then by the end of it, he will speak in a big dialogue and everyone will speak in a small dialogue. So yeah, it is a design. Does it have to happen in every scene? No, sure, no. I mean, I don't think so. But when in doubt, when you want a design, when you want things to feel a certain way, sure, you can try that.
So I have a question that we always have less time to shoot as compared to what we want. The producers always will say that shoot it in less number of days or shoot it in these many days. So what I would wanted to ask is, would you rather compromise on a whole treatment of the film, or just compromise on few scenes and keep the few scenes the way you want them to? And if that is the way, how do you identify those scenes that mujhe ye scenes aise hi chahiye, no matter how?
That's a great question, man. I always struggle with it, and I think most directors, no matter what your budget is, you always have this problem.
Yeah.
So you're right. I generally have 4 or 5 scenes where I don't want to compromise. Like the scene we discussed, I had 4 other scenes. I was like, listen, these scenes I don't want to rush, right? So I need my time to be able to think. So what I would do is I would sometimes make my other schedule tighter, because I knew those were easy scenes, and I could, if I didn't get 10 shots, I got 4 shots, I can still make it work, and never undervalue the power of basic coverage. I don't like basic coverage, but sometimes you tell yourself, these 5 scenes need my craft and it needs everything I have to give. But these other 3 scenes, I don't need to be fancy. I will be simplistic. Basic is the wrong word, but you can be simplistic and still communicate. So then I choose between the scenes where I can be simplistic and the scene where I want craft. And I will, compromise is a heavy word and I don't like it, but I would redesign my treatment to allow me to work within the given constraints. Guys, I just want to again thank you all before you all go on mute. Thank you so much, and I just hope I've managed to answer some of your curiosities.
Thank you so much, Shakun. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and of course, send us your feedback. Let us know how we can make this better for you. Thank you so much, and thank you, Shakun, again. This was fun. Bye, guys.